Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel Podcast. This is a Friday the 13th edition. Today, we're ranking the back half of this series. Oh, excitement. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man wielding his machete, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello, Tom.
They say he died as a boy, but he keeps coming back.
Okay.
That is the opening voiceover of Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, heralding the return of Jason Voorhees and all his concomitant continuity problems.
It's fantastic.
I think, given that they only started cementing the mythology of Jason Voorhees in Part 6, I would say the most consistent aspect of his mythology is timeline problems.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're looking for a through line in this series, timeline problems is as close to you as you get to what Jason Voorhees is about.
And then remarkably, the movie that has nothing to do with timeline decides to just totally change the mythology at one point in this back half of the series.
Yeah, you really... after episode 6... We've been talking about Star Wars for too long. After part 6... of the last movie we covered, I thought, there's no way they can do any more damage to this timeline than has already been done.
Oh, no, sir.
I couldn't have been more wrong.
How dare you? All right. Here we are. We have to rank and declare for the back half of the Friday the 13th series. I want to say that at the end of the front half of the series, we both said it won't go as smoothly as the front half when we do the back half.
Yeah.
But...
I like the but.
There's so much interesting shit to talk about in the back half of this series, Tom.
I'm going to say, I think there must be something wrong with me. I'm sure you have your own theories.
Sure.
Because I was cognizant as I was watching the 5 films we're about to cover that I was watching mostly garbage. Right? However, gradations of quality within that, and we'll break that down today.
Sure.
But I can confidently say I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yep, exactly. So
I'm really something that I don't know. Something that I'm learning about myself is that I'm increasingly drawn to crap that I understand.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, I'm all too often baffled by contemporary cinema, and so when I get a chance to watch movies that even though they don't execute well, I feel like I can, I understand the choices they're making.
Yes,
even
exactly.
the more bizarre choices, like the let's say, for example, the first 2/3 of Jason Takes Manhattan. I'm sort of, as I'm watching it, I'm going, yeah, I get it. They didn't have enough money to put the entire movie
exactly.
in New York. So that they had to come up with they had to make 2/3 of the movie, they're literally treading water. So
there's, yeah.
It doesn't matter that it's disappointing, because I know where they're coming from. I understand their limitations.
You know why it happened.
They wrote themselves into a corner. They had to get out of it. Anyway.
So there's a baseline of ineptitude that runs through the back half of this series.
Really?
Right?
evident, isn't it?
That's just, it's just where they are. They just don't, you know. And we've talked at length about the Crystal Lake Memories, the Camp Crystal Lake Memories series, a front half and a back half. And what I love about watching that is even the own directors are like, yeah, I was super young. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. That kind of commentary within the series itself. And then on top of that, I've been so excited to talk to you about this back half of the series because we talk about it all the time. What things do you value? What's important to you?
Yeah.
And the back half of this series illustrates big swings, trying things that are different.
Definitely. You're so right. Yeah.
To middling or not so middling either on the lesser half.
Yeah.
Degrees. And it illustrates what's important to you because we got all kinds of movies in the back half.
Yeah.
We have movies that are traditional or feel traditional and connected to the front half of this series that maybe don't execute well. Movies that try something different. Movies that try big swings. At least a couple of movies that try big swings that are probably thought of as the worst movies in the series.
Yeah.
And then you have like an outlier, right? And you and I have to talk about Freddy versus Jason, but we agreed that since we're talking about Friday the 13th, we talk about it from just the sort of Jason experience or from that side of the lens.
It's versus, we're not discussing Freddy versus Jason, we're discussing versus Jason.
Yeah, right.
In fact, period, Jason.
So all of that is to say that, one, we say it all the time, what do you value in the front half of this series? But two, I want to make it clear, we've been doing this for like 4 fucking years. I think this was the hardest series to rank.
Oh.
For me.
It's certainly not easy, yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know what I care about the most. And I came into this ranking knowing I wasn't sure what I wanted to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so much competing criteria.
Ugh. It's all over the place.
Because you want to reward innovation, but at the same time you also
when it's done so poorly, what do you do with that?
Yeah, I mean, let's agree that none of these movies entirely stick the landing. I think that's, we can start with that consensus. It's really interesting you bring up Crystal Lake Memories as well, because that made me second guess a lot of my rankings and declarations, precisely because the filmmakers themselves seem to be so down on movies that I actually quite appreciated. That they made, and I saw the good in, and they didn't seem to be able to see the good in their own movies.
Yeah.
So it was, I had to kind of wrestle with that a little bit, and and kind of came to the realization that I might be speaking up for movies that traditionally have been maligned.
Well, and
if Crystal Lake, if the attitude expressed in Crystal Lake Memories is anything to go by.
The thing that surprised me the most in Crystal Lake Memories, what's the name of the producer that had been along all the time?
Frank Mancuso.
Mancuso, yeah.
Yeah, Mancuso, yes.
So when
I made him extra Italian by calling him Mancuso.
When Mancuso was
and that's no easy. That's no easy feat when you see him.
Yeah, exactly right.
When you see his talking at you, like, that guy can't get much more Italian. Somehow I managed.
He's very Italian. When he came to a point where he thought to himself, "Listen, I got to stop fucking doing these movies, or else I won't be taken seriously." I thought,
but we
oh shit, yeah. What do I do now?
But look what he went on to do. He went on to do Species.
I know.
a reputable horror, like a reputable horror movie.
Yeah.
Or sci-fi horror movie. So that, I mean, we were struck by that with the first half of these movies, just how much, just the level of self-knowledge about what it is the people involved in these movies are doing. And it really shows on screen because you're not kind of, there's not that over-ambition that we see in a lot of horror franchises or fantasy franchises to turn it into something that, to turn the franchise into something that it can never successfully be.
But that's the thing that interests me the most, because I do see ambition in the back half of this series, but it's like that in itself is a backhanded compliment because it's handled poorly.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, to different degrees, but
sure, but
yeah,
you have big ideas that are poorly
clear,
executed.
Though, yeah, but that's what I mean. Going back to the Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yes.
I mean, the title itself is just wrong. It's
well. Wait, don't.
I know. Okay,
don't mess up my future jokes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I got you. All right. Thank you for that deterrent. But anyway, take Jason Takes Manhattan.
Sure.
You can see what you see what they're trying to do.
Yes.
And when it finally gets around to doing it, it's all that you hoped it would be. And these, you know, the other big contrast with the front half of the series that we did was that there was whole movies that were excelling.
Mm-hmm.
At what they were doing.
Yeah, right.
I feel like when these movies excel, they do so in small fragments.
Yeah, it sputters.
The beginning of one, the end of the other,
Fits
the middle section
of another. Is the phrase that kept crawling through my mind.
This one is generally poor, but it's got a good kill. You know, it's that kind of trade-off. But at the same time, like this is like 5 to 11. It's not. Yeah. It's not a part of a franchise that's known for taking risks like this.
Sure.
In the same way.
But what's interesting to me is that from movie to movie, they're so vastly different from each other. You have a movie that seems to want to be connected to the previous 6 movies and feels within that vein. You have a movie that clearly wanted to do something different, and then you can argue to what extent it was successful in that.
Well,
you have a couple of movies that clearly, if you watch Camp Crystal Lake Memories, were like placeholders for what we can't do. We can't do what we want to do.
What we can't legally do.
Yeah. Let's do this shit instead. And each one takes a bigger swing than the other.
Yes.
And then you have the final movie where they finally got to the place where they wanted to do, and I'm really excited to talk about how successful did they do what they wanted to do. And so, the movies are so vastly different from each other. Yep. When you think about, okay, they had an idea. They did what they wanted to do. How well did they do that? Yes. And then how good does that translate
did they actually
on screen?
Yeah. How much of their idea did they actually do in the movie?
Yes, exactly.
That's another
consideration.
How much of the central conceit actually made it into the movie?
And so more than any other series we've ever done, I just feel like this series begs for what do you value?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's a really interesting viewing experience, especially when you're doing it back to back. And it's interesting because I guess if you're looking for kind of consistency in these movies, by the way, good luck if that is your goal.
No, yeah.
But you get the sense that we're in the period of the franchise where they really they want to get to the next crossover, because the series is kind of framed by two movies which are essentially Friday the 13th, a Friday the 13th crossover with another
horror
franchise.
series. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, one is, one is you only see the remnants of that. They were New Blood. The New Blood was supposed to be a Carrie crossover,
Right.
and it still more or less plays like that, even though there's no Carrie in it. And then you end with Freddy versus Jason. So which they're kind of as soon as New Line take control of the series, that's their ultimate goal, is to get it to a Freddy Kreuger crossover. Yeah. As you said, having to pump out movies in just as kind of placeholders before they get there. So that's the kind of direction of the series at this point. Even I think Jason Takes Manhattan and Jason Goes to Hell, they're essentially trying to combine Jason with one other distinct element that has never been there before.
Yes, right.
One is a place and one is both of them are places, Hell and Manhattan, which
sure.
to many are the same thing anyway. So I guess you sort of, there's this desire for new ideas that kind of drives these 5 films. For new opportunities to kind of attach Jason Voorhees to something different each time. And generically, that's true as well. Each movie is a slightly different genre. Of a kind of, it's a horror. Each of them are horror hybrids. They're not just horror movies. They're horror movies plus something else.
Yes, including maybe horror/horror.
Yeah. But different kinds of horror. And also, we talked about this with the first 6 movies. We've actually, once we do this, we've covered the entirety of the franchise, because we did the original and reboot on our Patreon. We talked about, that they're...
Sign up, everybody.
Yeah. For completionist sake, if nothing else. But these movies immediately, like from minute 1 of the first movie, Friday the 13th goes into plagiarism mode.
Yeah.
And it just keeps on going. I mean, these movies pull ideas from other franchises, from other movies. They don't do it as well as the earlier movies, but it's always been there in the series. It's always been a part of the series that
correct.
It feels like lots of other movies. And then you get into the when you get into like Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, you're getting into film postmodernism there. So it's given a shot in the arm by postmodern irony in horror cinema,
right?
Because Friday the 13th has kind of been doing that all along, but not in a knowing way. It's been stealing without the self-awareness this whole time. So it lends itself quite well to what's we think of now as the kind of Scream phase of
correct
of horror cinema.
And they talk about that in that documentary about, okay, you got to make it more like Scream.
Yeah.
But I have a different correlation for that particular movie that I'll wait on until we get there. But
okay. Yeah, and we had this, and it reminded me as well of Halloween H2O, because that was the same. It was that and Jason X, I think, were shaped by being made.
There's similar times too, 98 to 2. Yeah.
And they had to rethink tone based on that. So.
Okay.
Are you still undecided, or do you think you're? Or you?
I mean, I think I have an idea, but. Yeah, I mean, there's there's a part of me that I think I know what I want to do. But it really is not easy. And also
I haven't even thought about good or bad yet, by the way.
Yeah, right.
I'm hoping that whatever I say about ranking is going to shape that.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
I have
or influence
honestly,
that rather.
I really don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I'm clueless. And then, like, in terms of good bad, because there are movies in the back half of this series that clearly have the least money behind them and are the poorest made.
Which I still don't understand. I still don't understand how there's no reinvestment in this franchise.
Right. Each
movie seems to start from scratch in terms of budget every time, even though the movies before it are incredibly successful. I don't understand.
Well, and the thing is like there's a movie in this series that had excising Jason versus Freddy because that had the most money given to it. Clearly, like that's
yes, for sure.
That's a kind of an outlier, but there's one movie that was given the most money, but looks like it was given the least amount of money.
Interesting.
But a lot of that just has to do with the time it was made. So it got more money because movies were being made differently then.
Mm-hmm.
But it has a cheaper look.
Okay. Keep that one in your back pocket.
All right.
Like your future jokes, we'll wait on that one.
I'm so excited for that joke
because I don't want anything else to color my decision making at this point.
Well, what about for you? I mean, do you come in with a definitive idea for even your top movie?
For my top, I have a front runner. I think I have a clear front runner, and then I have two movies duking it out for the middle, and then two movies trying to avoid the depths of hell. Which apparently, and that's what I learned from these movies as well, hell's a pretty easy place to get out of.
Yeah, no problems.
Because, and you know, it also, coming back from hell doesn't seem to limit your ability to travel, because you
just have to go into Aaron Gray's vagina.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had seen these movies. I'd seen these movies before. I don't know if I'd seen all of them more than once. I think I have seen all of them more than once.
So that's an interesting point too, because I have seen all of these movies before, but I had not seen all of them until just last year, because I was inspired upon our watching of the front half of the series. So there were two movies I had not seen.
Oh, okay.
At all until last year.
Well, Jason Lives is one of them, right?
Wait.
Part 6.
Well, that's the last series. I mean, in this part of the series, yeah.
Oh, okay. Even in this part, okay.
Yeah. I had not seen 7 or 9.
Okay. Yeah, I knew one of those was going to be Jason Goes to Hell, because if any movie is going to get missed out of your
right
of your binge watch, it's going to be that one.
Now, one I saw in the theater, and that was Jason X.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of these in the theater.
And then Manhattan I had seen somewhere along the way, but
it feels like a movie. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking. Maybe I'm reading it through what actually happens in the movie. But it feels like it's got this. It's got the residue of a movie kind of shown on like a coach trip, like a movie that's kind of on, but you're not really watching it.
Right.
It's just there to kill time.
Yes.
But I think I'm reading into the fact that that's what the movie's about. It's about a school coach trip.
Right.
on the water.
And it's weird because one of these movies, it was made much later. It had more money behind it. It looks and feels more polished. But I don't think that necessarily means it's a better movie.
No, that's not. I don't think budget or production values are a factor in any of these movies. In at least in terms of my appreciation of them.
All right.
That doesn't change a thing. But what I was going to say was that before is that I guess I'm, because of how we've done this on the podcast and the discussions we've had, I'm more timeline focused. But my impression from watching these movies before was that there was no attempt to kind of sew together Final Friday to Freddy versus Jason. But
right.
if you're looking for it, those movies actually, I mean, the timeline is as coherent as in any other part of the franchise, which I know is a low bar.
In an incoherent timeline to begin with, doesn't matter.
But I appreciate the effort to kind of at least keep time. Like it's so interesting when you watch Crystal Lake Memories and you're just like, wow, we didn't want this film to interfere with anything we were going to do with Freddy versus Jason, so we had to set it in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, have you seen your timeline? By this point, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter a lick.
Nobody remembers from one film to another where he ended up at the end of the movie, where the next movie's beginning, what's happened in between.
You haven't cared about the timeline since minute one. Why would you care about it now?
So suddenly they become concerned with fandom balking at the idea that, Jason's whatever happened in and all it means is whatever happened in Freddy versus Jason, he ended up back on Earth, and then at some point got imprisoned in a after Crystal Lake became a research facility rather than a holiday.
Rather than a vacation destination. Yeah. Yes.
He was there, and they were like, "Well, he'll be our inaugural prisoner then, I guess." He'll be our inaugural subject. Makes total sense when you put it like that.
Such a fun when that comes up in that movie. Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
Research facility. Fantastic.
Got a lot to say about the opening of that film. One of my favorite people is involved in it, as you probably can guess who.
Whoa, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Anyone who's listened to this podcast before will know that I'm very fond of a certain director.
There you go.
Makes an appearance at the
I just love that he was interested in. I'll get involved, but I want to be in it, and I want to die.
And he lent this young director his crew.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
To make the movie.
Yeah.
He's good people.
Tom Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
Do you wish to start? Do you want me to start? What is the top of the back half of this series?
What's the front of the back?
Yeah. What's the front of the back?
What's the front of the back? I'm happy to start because this is the limits of what I know about my ranking and declarations, is that I know what I'm putting first.
Okay.
The top of the list. I'm not even sure if I would call it a good movie, but we'll get there. So the movie at the top of my list.
Before you start, again, I'm scared we're going to be the same. I want us to be different for some reason, but
I actually hope we're the same for once, because I'm unusually worried that I've got this horribly wrong.
Okay. Me too, actually.
Because I feel like were I to leave the closet and talk to any human other than you, they would say, "What are you talking about?
What's the matter with you?"
Yes, this is a known disaster of cinema. But anyway, yeah, the top of my list is a movie that I think, speaking of talking to other humans outside of the closet, I feel like anyone outside looking in who hadn't seen this movie or didn't know anything about the Friday the 13th movie would just automatically assume was the nadir of the series because it kind of subscribes to one of the overarching cliches about sequel cinema, and because it's and this'll tip my hand a little to you.
Mm-hmm.
It aims to be a placeholder in the series.
Ooh.
So it might come as a big surprise, and this is one of the movies that Crystal Lake Memories made me second guess my ranking of. But top of my list is a little movie called Jason Twitter. Sorry, Jason X. I'll never get used to saying that.
Right.
So Jason X is the top. Is for some reason
the
top of my list. I mean, I'll give we obviously will discuss it in too much detail, but too much detail, just too much detail.
Way too much.
But to kind of thumbnail it, it's the movie that I think of. It seems to resemble to me the tone of a movie like Part 6, Jason Lives, where the tone is fun, frothy, light. It's got some self-awareness, but essentially it takes itself seriously as a slasher movie, and again, for some reason, as a piece of science fiction. It's not to be underestimated as either of those. And so I think I was overall impressed about how fluidly they, well, what's the opposite of retrofitted? They kind of future fitted,
right?
The conventions and formula of a Friday the 13th movie to a movie set both in the future and in space.
And so that's the interesting thing about that movie. Going back to what I said previously, if you put Freddy versus Jason, which is an outlier, and was given more money, this is what I love about Jason X is it's the most expensive movie of everything except Freddy versus Jason.
Oh, because that's because it sat on the shelf for 2 years, surely.
True. But it also looks the cheapest. I think it might look the cheapest made.
But to borrow a phrase of my people, it's cheap and cheerful.
Yeah. I always think of
it's like
Soap Dish with Gary Marshall. It's like, you got us a big wave outside. It's expensive and depressing. 2 words I don't like. You know what I like? Peppy and cheap. Peppy and cheap.
Happy and cheap. Happy and cheap, absolutely. It's like your favorite Goodwill, the Goodwill that's run by a couple of kooky guys who put all kinds of strange shit in there.
Yeah,
that's the way I feel about it. But it's interesting as well. Like when you get into Crystal Lake Memories and they're kind of complaining that there's too much. There was too much of their own movie, by the way.
Yeah.
So you'd think they'd have some control over this. They were like, oh, there was too much color. I was expecting it to be more dystopian color schemes like The Dark Knight. That's actually what I kind of like about it, is that it's not that. It's like, just because the movie's set in a dystopian future, why does that mean I have to look at grey backgrounds? Can't I have a bit of color in my life for the next 2 hours?
So
anyway, I've said too much.
Here's one of the jokes I'd been saving that I'll say now for that movie. Because
which, it's always the best way to set up a joke, is to let people know where the joke came from, when you're going to tell the joke, that kind of thing, yes.
Well, it's a specific movie made in a specific time, right? I mean, that movie is a...
yeah, and it's not the time it was released, incidentally,
right.
But yes.
So that's the funniest thing about it, is that it's released in 2002, but probably made in 2000. I know that it was on the shelf for at least a couple of years, which means it might have been made in 99.
I think it was made in... Well, I don't know. I have a credit check.
Shot in 99.
I have a credit check that might actually carbon date it. So
okay,
listen out for that.
So the one thing that rings true for me, and that's the one movie I'd seen in the theater.
Yeah,
it was the one movie. I mean, I just adored that movie when it first came out because it just defies all conventions.
Well, I actually, I don't know if I agree with that statement. I agree with the spirit.
It doesn't
of that
defy all
statement.
conventions because other sequels do go to space, but usually that means
the slashers go to space as well, and I think that's what it's trading off.
I mean, Leprechauns go to space. There are other film series.
Machete's been there.
Yeah. There are other series that go to space, but
Furious.
Usually that means the death of the series, and this felt
That's what I mean.
Yeah, this felt more like a breath of fresh air for the series.
I think so too. And the discovery of self-awareness.
Correct. Yes.
Which, again, in fragments, is actually really well done.
I know. But the other part of that series that cracks me up, and if it was made in 99, if it was filmed in 99, it fits the timeline perfectly.
Yeah.
Because every time I watch that film, I always think the same thing. Somebody went into a room in Hollywood and said, "What's hot now, everybody? Dawson's Creek. I want Dawson's Creek in space with Jason. Make it happen." And that's what the movie feels like to me, is Dawson's Creek in space.
It's okay.
And that is something that should not work, but remarkably works very well.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, Dawson's Creek certainly, but it feels like, it also feels like a kind of do-over of the water section of Jason Takes Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they even refer to it as a boat at one point, which I don't know whether that was meant that was a mistake or not. But essentially, it's like we didn't make the most of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do the boat well?
Yes, right.
But the reason that I'm being unnecessarily nitpicky about the idea of defying all conventions is that what I saw in the movie, which I don't think I'd ever seen before, probably because I'm not I wasn't as deep in the weeds of the series as we are now, was that it did feel to me like transposed Friday the 13th.
Yeah, exactly. It does feel like that.
Like the same, like at one point I'm writing, this scene is nominally about an airlock, but you take the airlock out of it and everything else is the same as it normally is in a Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th movie, exactly.
And I don't think I gave the movie enough credit beforehand about like how much they reproduced a Friday the 13th movie,
right,
inside of a spaceship in the future.
So, going into it, I thought my answer would be exactly the same as yours.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And then watching it, I like, this was the biggest wrestle I've had in a really long time. I almost want to go the opposite way just to be different, but in the end, the things that you're talking about that you valued were the things that I valued.
Yeah.
They stayed on my side, but I was surprised how difficult a decision it was for me, but I did have Jason X at the top. But I thought that was a batshit crazy decision because, like I was saying before...
Me too.
It's in a pantheon of cheap-looking movies, that one looks the cheapest made. despite having spent the most money on it outside of Freddy vs. Jason. But the effects that they had to do in that movie were outsized clearly to their budget. Like, you know, it.
I don't even know if I agree. I agree with that. I think they cover it up with a lot of camp and kitsch quite well.
I agree with that, but it still looks cheap.
But again, you're using cheap in a pejorative way. And I think this is the kind of cheap.
Well, I'm thinking more of how the movie looks to a general audience. I think the movie looks cheap to a general audience.
But in somewhere between 1999 and 2002, would the audience feel the same, or would they be, this looks pretty decent from what we're capable of doing with digital effects?
All right. It looks like the worst of Star Trek effects.
Enterprise,
yeah.
It's got there's a lot of. While I was watching it, I was like, there's a lot of Star Trek Enterprise problems here.
Yeah, right.
Which, you know, I guess it predated that, at least when it was made, but it came out while it was in its second season, so.
But I found myself adoring that movie when it first came out and I first saw it in theaters. I was delighted by it when I first saw it. And it just stuck with me. I almost didn't want, because I felt that strongly about it when I first saw it, I thought I should give it a more critical glance. But the things that we're talking about within it are, you know, it takes risks that, you know, hard to do that late in the series and pull it off in a way that is entertaining and fun.
I mean, it's got this. It's sort of freed from the admittedly fractured timeline.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
It's kind of got a license to do whatever it wants, and you know because we've just covered the Star Wars movies and we're bemoaning. It's like you're in. You know, the future is completely open. There's no Star Wars after you. You can do whatever you want.
Yes.
And
exactly.
of course they're like. It's like, well, let's call back to something from the original trilogy. It's like, why? Why look backwards all the time?
Yeah.
And Jason X is an example of what happens when you that isn't one of your concerns.
Clearly not one of your concerns. Yeah.
And it makes for you know, a pretty entertaining night out. And I've come across this before with sort of people who, I'm not saying that you are, but I'm getting a little flavor of it. It's like I'm slightly embarrassed about how much I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, and I'm trying to come up with, you know, I'm trying to sort of deconstruct it where it doesn't need deconstructing. Like, my first response was the correct response, but I don't trust myself.
Yeah, right.
Because it seems like it should be Leprechaun.
Yes, exactly.
Or whatever.
But that was.
Yeah.
I wasn't embarrassed by my first viewing, but
no, I know, but subsequently,
watching it for the series for our purposes, I felt like I should be. Yes.
Yeah, and because it was a real crowd pleaser when it came out, and you know, it was. I've heard lots of different people talk about what a great, you know, they saw it on a Friday night with a, as I say, a movie theater full of people, but I mean
I think
that must have been a more select phenomenon given the box office numbers.
Yes.
But and it was such a crowd pleasing, you know, it was a movie that was designed to please a crowd. And so people are kind of a little bit sheepish.
But I'm not sure that it did that at the time. I mean, it was drummed critically. But the one moment in the Camp Crystal Lake Memories I like is one of the actors said that I think she was talking about the reviews saying it looks cheap, it's this, it's dumb, it's stupid. And she said, yeah, I think that's what's good about it. I think that's what
Yeah.
works. And I think she's right about that.
I think she's totally right.
Yeah.
She's dead on the money. And it's way more competently made than anyone who actually made the movie will admit.
Right. Yes.
So, once again, that conspicuous competence. Which is what you get with Canadian local hires, I think. It's always gonna be good workmanship.
Beauty, eh?
Yeah. So anyway, that's
All right, top of both of our lists then.
Well, we've got to switch gears now, and I've got to hear about what was competing for first place, because
okay,
my second place is far off Jason X, but it sounds like you had a more of a tussle.
It was really close for me, and
yeah,
maybe the biggest surprise for me as well.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this. I mean, it could literally be any of the other.
It literally could, at this point. and
it is.
And it is. It's a movie that...
It's even more surprising, it's none of them. I put nothing in there because I refuse to give second place to any of these movies.
So, it's a movie that gloms on to other ideas. It's a movie that... Well, one could argue, like all of these movies, looks cheaply made and not...
Yeah.
Not with the best ideas, or not with the best talent.
Remember, this is
behind the
scenes. This was nearly the top of your list.
I know, I
nearly
understand.
the top of your list.
But we talk about the things that we value, and I couldn't believe how much I simultaneously valued two things. One was how connected it felt to 2 through 6 and those movies.
Okay.
Where it was setting, what it was doing.
Nice.
What other Friday the 13th do that this movie does do, while in itself taking its own risks, whether they're stolen or not.
You're not narrowing this down one iota for me.
Nope. I'm trying to keep it as veiled as possible for as long as possible.
But you're talking in specifics. It's just that all of these movies
could
are
be
indicative of what you're saying.
I honestly couldn't believe how much I gravitated towards... Ooh, I almost let the cat out of the bag of good, bad, but...
Well, there might have to be a moratorium on good, bad, because I don't know how we do that.
I don't know how to discuss it with you. I really don't. It should be a blanket statement, but it's not. I'll say that.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a movie that I think works on its own terms in a way that the other movies aren't, in terms of production and quality. All of this is to say, the movie that came so close to the top of my list that I can't believe was almost to the top of my list is Friday the 13th Part 7, A New Beginning.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I thought it was the New Blood.
Oh. Wait. 5 is a new beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, 5 is a new beginning.
God damn it! I'm lost in the whirlpool of this fucking series.
When we did our YouTube Rank the Posters episode, I couldn't remember that title.
Damn
I couldn't
it!
Pull it from anywhere. So
it's my second favorite in the series. I can't even remember the fucking title.
Well. This is interesting.
The New Blood.
The New Blood. Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Well, there was so, in terms of where I go next, and that could have been your first, this would not have been my first. So much so that when I watched...
Then it's at the bottom of your list.
No. So much so that when I watched it, it's at the bottom of a lot of people's list. when I sat watching it, as I was watching it, I just kept going in my head going, this is going to be second in my list.
No matter what.
It's so funny.
Which is funny because you watched it first.
Huh?
Well, you watched it first, right? It's the first movie in the second half.
Oh, so I've given the game away then.
Oh, I just assumed you were still talking about 7. You could be talking about something else.
I could be talking about something else, yeah, at this point. No, this is what's next on my list.
Okay.
What's next on my list is, I said, this is second. And I'm so saying, doesn't matter what doesn't matter what I've seen, what I've not seen, this is gonna be second place. And I think a lot of that was sort of, it's like a really good TV movie version of a Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah, right.
But your instincts are correct. That movie is also Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood.
Yes! Damn it. I mean, I'm excited and disappointed that we have...
Yeah, I know.
You know?
I really hoped you were going to say Jason Takes Manhattan. If I could have, if I had a genie to make, I would waste one of my 3 wishes on that. No,
I just love the idea of you being like 15, 20 minutes into The New Blood and saying, this will be second.
I mean, there's no way this can be top of the list. But it's probably going to be a solid
See, I don't
second.
see why it couldn't be, considering everything else that you're watching.
Well, because it doesn't stick the landing. But I think it was always going to be maybe I should rephrase it and say at least second, because what I really respected about it was the idea, the legitimacy of of kind of reimagining the Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th movie as a paranormal thriller. I thought that was a great idea. It's exactly where the series should go. They don't execute it well overall.
Mm-hmm.
They also don't completely mess it up, I don't think.
No.
And I think so. It's out of respect to the legitimacy of that, and also in terms of ranking, it was easy because I was kind of going back and forth between 2 movies. And the other movie, I don't think is as good a use of Jason Voorhees as The New Blood.
Okay. That's the thing that I started gravitating towards this movie because it felt, despite the fact that it shouldn't, it felt more in the Friday the 13th wheelhouse. Of course, it's glomming on to Carrie.
Well, it's set at Camp Crystal Lake for one thing.
Exactly. It's set at Camp Crystal Lake.
For any movie, for any Friday the 13th movie, isn't it?
Very much so. It's set at Camp Crystal Lake. It has that.
It's mostly boardwalks. That's what I think of when a Friday the 13th movie is. The action is set mostly on boardwalks. It's got that. Perhaps more than any other Friday the 13th
Well,
movie.
the other thing I think it has.
Boardwalks.
The other thing I think it has is that classic kind of horror, whatever. That classic kind of horror point of a villain that keeps coming back at you. You can't, no matter what you do, Jason keeps getting up, and the manner in which he keeps getting up, and that the villain, or rather our heroes, have to keep trying to dispatch with him, to me, feels very rooted in the genre in a way that, to me, is very satisfying.
It's horror made by a person who loves horror movies.
Yeah, exactly.
And John Carl Buchner, who is Buchner, what's his
Buchler,
name?
I think.
Buchler, yeah, who directed Troll, and as you find out in Crystal Lake Memories, got this job through the success, whatever that means, of Troll.
We were talking recently about the Ghoulies series. He's done a movie in that series as well.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting you should say, like, 15, 20 minutes in. And the other thought was, this is the first Friday the 13th movie that reminds me of Night of the Hunter. So, when you talk about feeling like a real horror movie, like a classic horror movie, I think there's a lot to be said about that. I think there's also one truly outstanding performance in the movie that almost kind of carries it to second spot too. We'll talk about that.
All right.
You can probably guess, but who I'm talking about, but we'll save it for the episode.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I also can think of one particular shot from the director where I think,
me too. Yeah.
Oh, now that's the shit I like right there.
And the fact that you know, like Rob Zombie, directing was not his main gig. He was a effects person.
Uh-huh.
You know, he's like a Tom Savini.
Yeah, right.
There's a care taken with some of the effects moments that, you know, it's always gonna be strong when you come from that background. I think.
All right.
So we're in lockstep.
We're in lockstep so far.
Probably not for much longer.
Well, yeah. What's your third favorite film in the series? Yeah. And where, like, you said it was a fairly easy decision between top and two. It was harder for me.
Top and two. Okay. Yeah. No, it was hard. Yeah, this was a harder decision between two and three.
Two and three. Okay.
And like I said, the deciding vote was New Blood is a better use of Jason Voorhees.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably gives you an idea about what movie I have next.
Okay.
Because probably in the bigger scheme of things, outside the closet, outside the horror closet that we've created for ourselves, this is by far a better movie, a better all-round movie than New Blood, maybe even Jason X for that matter.
Right.
But it doesn't really work as a installment in the Friday the 13th franchise.
All right.
I'm not saying once you kind of eliminate that, it's, you know, a perfect movie by any means, but I think it's probably a higher quality movie if you're not just thinking about it as a Friday the 13th movie, and it is, of course, Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, right.
Because, you know, and it's just because, you know, Jason is sort of the whipping boy for the majority of the movie.
Correct. This is, well, yeah. I mean, we'll get to it when we get to the movie, but...
So it's hard to take it seriously as a Friday the 13th
movie,
which is not to
that movie
say
is a
that
Freddy movie. Freddy is the character that incites the story.
And it's just so much of Jason getting punked in the movie that it depreciated as a Friday the 13th movie, but when we go back next year and look at it as a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel, I'm sure it will grow.
Yes.
And outside of these rather arbitrary limitations we've set upon ourselves, I actually think quite a lot of the movie.
Yeah.
But within the Friday the 13th franchise, it's a little bit of a letdown in a way it wouldn't otherwise be if you're just thinking of it as a like an action horror movie.
Yeah.
So that's why it's third on my list, but it could have topped if it was more Jason forward, it could have probably topped the list.
Right. So that's the problem I've had overall with that film.
Jason forward. What the fuck am I talking about?
Literally, every time I considered ranking this series, I found myself removing Freddy versus Jason and putting it off to the side somewhere as though it didn't count.
You might as well. It doesn't fit Tetris-like into the rest of the series.
Yeah, it just doesn't.
That line isn't gonna disappear with Freddy versus Jason in it.
Right. And like you said, if you looked at it from a different angle, it might be the best out of all of these movies. It looks the most polished. It has the most money behind it. Just
well directed. It's probably the best direction in any of these movies.
Absolutely. It has England in it, so it automatically is going to have a good performance in it.
Right.
But our task was to look at it from
you got it. Yeah,
from the Jason point of view, and I cannot discount that Jason is the second banana in that film, and
in World. I mean, it's
right.
The movie makes no secret of it.
Yeah,
they call him an errand boy.
Mm-hmm.
They and worse, a hockey puck.
Yes.
So,
and
I don't think you're.
There's really no reason, I think, for a sane person to gravitate towards another movie. As we know, I am not a sane person.
Yeah.
And every time I thought about ranking...
I'm sat in a closet saying Jason forward as if it means anything in the real world, so I'm right there with you, my friend.
As I kept thinking about it, one movie kept moving itself in front of Freddy versus Jason every single time, and that movie was Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yes! You're a braver man than I, because my heart told me that I like that movie more better than I ranked it.
I didn't think that would happen, by the way. The first two in my ranking, it felt like this portion of the series felt like it should be a given that Freddy vs. Jason was the top of the list just because it had more money behind it. It's more polished, better performances.
They've been making it for 20 years.
Yeah, they just had more, they'd been thinking about it a long time. It felt like it should be the top of the list. And I knew the other two were going to be at the top above that. I didn't know in what order.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult not to call 7 the top of my list for me. But
it feels like it comes out of the front half rather than the back half of the series.
It does. Exactly right.
And that's why I knew it was going to be second, but I also, having watched it, I was like, this can't be the top of any list.
It shouldn't be, but it shouldn't be the top of any list. But when you take the back half of the Friday the 13th series, all bets are off.
Yeah.
So I ended up valuing Jason X as much as I did when I first saw it. It was the top of my list,
good.
But like so close, 7 right behind it. Manhattan. What to say about Manhattan? This is
here's my experience, not thoughts. We're not getting to thoughts yet, but my experience of Jason versus Manhattan. That's a better title, actually. Kind of is Jason versus Manhattan in that they are on other sides of the movie. But it was a movie that I had a lot of affection for going into this viewing.
Okay.
And when it began and I started taking notes, I was thinking, why do I like this movie?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, not as in like, not as in like, I'm loving this movie, but I can't explain why. I was like, why did I think I liked this movie?
Yeah.
Because the first there's a fucking dog shit after dog shit scene, and then we get into the final third of the movie, which, spoiler alert, is what the title is. Is what the title's about.
Yes.
And then it doesn't put a foot wrong from that moment onwards.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they arrive in Manhattan, and so I'm like, oh, I mean, I'm remembering this movie through the final third.
Yeah,
and
right.
And everything I love about that. But there's a price to pay to get there.
This particular viewing,
yeah,
I liked the first 2/3 more than I ever had before.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
why?
I forget it. I forget it Memento style every time.
Right.
Anything on that boat. I mean, me and Jaws, right? Anything that happens on a boat in a movie, I seem to forget.
Just doesn't matter.
But it just doesn't matter. But but you're right as well. Like I'm overstating it. I mean, it's just that it's the disparity between the movie doing what it's supposed to be doing and
yes,
it waiting to do that is frustrating.
Yeah.
And how silly and wrong everything on the boat is.
I guess part of what might have colored how I feel about the movie too was watching the Camp Crystal Lake Memories, and that delightful director who
yes
kept saying, "Well,
we gave up."
Obviously,
he said, "We gave up trying to explain
yes,
anything that happens in the film."
Yes.
You don't hear honesty like that from people working in the film industry.
It was so delightful to watch. To watch a man say, well, we wanted 3/4 of this movie to be in New York. I was told, no, you can't do that. So I planned on doing 50% in New York and was told, go fuck yourself. And then I thought, okay, so we'll just do 25% in New York.
He lost that negotiation. It's so funny because everything that he's saying about what they did on the movie is what we normally say about them.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Like, you don't normally hear people in the industry talking that candidly about their, about their shortcomings.
Oh, it was amazing to listen to him say, a lot of people say this about the movie. Yeah, they're right.
Right, and the best part is when they said a lot of people have said how did get to Manhattan from Crystal Lake, and at some point we just gave up trying to explain it.
Amazing! What a great admission.
But doesn't that make you love the movie even more?
That's why I started loving it more.
Because when you don't have to think about it, it frees you up to enjoy all kinds of different aspects completely. Of the movie.
And
why are there mountains in the background? just don't think about it. It's filmed in Vancouver.
It's in
not New
Vancouver.
York. Get over it.
None of this matters. And what I love about it is if you were gonna shoot the majority of it in Vancouver anyway, well, just make 50% of it in New York, Vancouver fan for New York anyway. Do what you wanted to do in the first place.
Oh, I mean, that's the thing. Is like that's the other frustrating part of it is that they act as if this boat journey by school kids on a graduation trip, which I don't know is a thing, and certainly not done on the water to a big city city from a small town. They act as if that was the only way they could play for time until they got to New York. Mm-hmm. There's 1,000 ways. You could have had the first 2/3 of the movie at Crystal Lake, and then New York is like your kind of your spin-off. This could have done so much apart. This is not a foregone conclusion that you have to be on a boat for an hour.
Delightful.
Anyway,
it's supposed to be a boat with like 200 high school students, and it's got like 8 people.
So every other note for that movie is how big is this boat? Once again, how big is this boat? I'm getting conflicting information about the size of this boat. I was just going to say,
this boat is trying to tell me that it's a rowboat and a yacht.
It's like, and a little bit Moby Dick, like a little bit of a whaling ship as well.
God damn it!
So I mean, it's fun as all hell. Sometimes for the right reasons, most often for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
I once I got to the end of the movie, I realized I know why it's an enjoyable movie experience. It's just that I memento myself at the end of it that the whole movie is going to be like the final third.
Right.
So I'm going in like Guy Pearce, Guy Pearce screeching the car to a halt and beginning all over again, every single time. That's a Christopher Nolan reference, and that's a Christopher Nolan movie I like. So
good.
Back off, world. Oh fuck! But so I mean, I can let the cat out of the toxic waste barrel. Let the rat out of the toxic waste barrel. That's a better analogy. Yeah, that's Jason. It's I have so much fondness for it.
Yeah,
and so many problems with it.
Oh, simultaneously.
So and that makes it kind of high bottom for me.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? It's like it's like an abnormally lofty anus. You know what I mean? It's like because like people whose anuses are, or ani, I don't know how you say it, the plural, are like higher than normal, and they have to sit backwards on the toilet, which is a real thing.
Dear God!
Otherwise, they'd spray the toilet seat lid. So they have to sit backwards, so that when it sprays out, it goes. You've got enough bowl to catch. I don't know. I can't remember why I'm talking about this.
What the fuck?
But anyway, that's what I think of Friday the 13th. Jason Takes Manhattan, which is to say that I like it quite a bit.
All right.
Now it's a good shit, not a bad shit.
Yeah, it's a good shit. Absolutely. And I'll let my cat out of the bag, which should be obvious, but my next movie is Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, okay, so our bottom is the same, which is
yeah. But
I mean, this is speaking. I mean, I started off by talking about movies that baffle me. Jason Goes to Hell is a movie that baffles me
completely.
It's the hardest to. I mean, it goes to the bottom not necessarily because of its quality, although that is low. But it's compared to the others, its project is so misguided, omnidirectional, that
yes,
it's the biggest mess of the bunch by far.
But having said that, the biggest swing, maybe.
Because you got to swing at something.
They already have Part 5. They already have Part 5, A New Beginning, as a track laid for we did something that didn't work. Let's get Jason back.
Yeah, and they make reference to A New Beginning as if that's somehow going to help their case.
Yeah, right.
Well. They make reference to it in the movie, there being a Jason copycat killer. And I'm like, don't go back to that well. You burned yourself once already.
I'll cat out of the bag, though. I don't hate that movie as much as I should, or as much as other people do.
I think I'd agree with that. I think...
All right.
Oh, so, yeah, again, that's one of the movies where you really have to appreciate it in fragments. There are 2 or 3 fragments of the movie where it's kind of firing on all cylinders, but they're few and far between.
The other thing that's weird about that movie is that it has the most actors that I recognize from other things, I like, who I think are good performers. So...
yeah.
it has that going for it. It has people behind it, or rather on film, that I trust and like to
Yeah.
to do good work. I'll put in air quotes.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think they can be. I don't think any of them are culpable. They're all fairly committed for what they're being asked to do.
I don't know why they're being asked to do it, but
no. And it seems the most of all of the movies. It seems the most uncertain about its ultimate goal, because it convinces itself that it doesn't want to be a Friday the 13th movie, and then circles back to being exactly that. Which suggests that that even they lost faith in their idea as they were making the movie.
Right. Well, and
which is never a good sign.
Yeah. It was really interesting to watch the Camp Crystal Lake memories about that, because you had like a 22, 23-year-old director, first thing that guy's doing.
Yeah.
And all of that shows.
Yes, it does.
But again...
But the ambition...
yes, exactly. The ambition. Shows... the big swing that they decide to take in that movie. And, I kind of respect that a little bit. That they...
I think, yeah.
Because it's not exactly like 5, you know what I mean? It is in the sense of Jason's not on screen very much. But to try to add so much mythology so late in the series.
A broad application of very much when it comes to A New Beginning. You ain't in that movie at all.
Oh man.
I don't know. We'll get it. We'll try and figure it out when we talk about it. And I still don't think I have an answer. But I think the problem is starting with a good idea and then failing to sustain it, and to make it do justice to a 90-minute plus movie.
Right.
Is it one? Because some of these are 140 and some of these are 130. Is this a 130?
I have to go back and look.
It felt like a 140, but that doesn't mean it is.
It doesn't mean it was. Yeah.
yeah. But I think it's good that we've both got some nice things to say, because I mean, even more so than Jason X, I think people really dislike this film.
I know, yeah.
So, and it's your first time seeing it as well, so it's good to know that it's not the... Speaking as someone who's about to watch Megalopolis this weekend, I'm glad that, it's possible that movies might not quite be as bad as everyone says they are. And I'll let you know whether that helped on the other side.
Agreed. All right, friend. Well, you intimated that you were scared about the next portion of our tasks.
The format demands we do it.
Yeah.
I just don't feel competent to make that determination.
It feels like it should be the easiest thing in the world, right? It feels like we should call all these movies bad and just move on. But that's giving them short shrift.
It is giving it's very Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah.
And then we give out Kane Hodder's address to people.
Yes, right. I guess the question is do they deserve more?
They do. And I'll go as far as saying I think Jason X deserves more.
Okay.
Because I actually, along with H2O, along with Jason Lives and H2O, I think there's a kind of horror movie that is maligned precisely because it was made in the wake of Scream,
Mhm.
that actually it isn't. People assume it's self-parody, but it's actually not. It's a serious attempt to make a serious movie with humor in and around it.
Yeah.
And however that came about, I mean, a lot of it was bolted on. I get that they had a fairly deadpan script and they kind of punched it up with
Right.
with postmodern irony. However it came about, I think that
It came
mix
out
is
pretty
actually
successful for me.
I think so. Yeah, for me too. I think it's both it's funny and suspenseful and horrific and interesting in all the ways that a Friday the 13th movie or a postmodern horror movie should be.
Yeah.
So I'm content to call it a good movie.
I am too.
So I'll go as far as saying that. And then the rest, then it gets hard for me.
Okay. Because I think I mentioned this earlier in this episode, but each of these movies present themselves with a certain amount of incompetence. That's how they kind of present themselves on screen.
Yeah. Coming in hot, yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be declared bad movies.
No.
And take into account a movie, say, like Part 7, I think is the smallest budget out of all of these at $2.8 million. Now, when you feel that the most, I feel, when you're watching people run through the forest in other movies, it feels like they're walking in more than 10 to 15 feet of forest.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that really surprises me that the budget was so small.
Yeah.
I think they bleed that dry, I think.
Agreed.
And the money and whatever money they had is on screen.
I think so too. Enough for me I'm gonna call it a good movie.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm gonna slightly amend that and say it's quite good. It belongs to the category of quite good.
All right.
I mean, if it's like we've had this discussion before. I mean, it was easier when we were talking about a TV movie when we talked about Omen 4: The Awakening. And we shouldn't judge this by the conventions of a TV movie rather than a theatrical release.
Canadian TV movie.
Yeah, Canadian. We shouldn't judge it by those standards. But at the same time, I just feel it's very solid, very middle. It ends up being solid, middle of the road. There are a few car crash moments in there, but overall, nothing that conspicuously condemns it to bad.
Yeah.
I would say, but it's very average.
Yeah. I don't think that can be denied, but
yeah. So I'm gonna say it's quite good, solid. I'd be happy to sit down to it of an evening, and that means a lot these days for me.
The next one's harder for me because I listed 8 above Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah.
But one's more polished, like we talked about. I mean, you listed Freddy versus Jason, the next movie. Do you think that's a good movie?
It's not a good Friday the 13th movie, but it's a good movie, all-round movie.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's better than all of these movies, probably, as a movie.
Correct.
In terms of what it's doing conceptually and how well made it is.
Because what I'm stuck with is that I think I like 8 more as a Friday the 13th movie, but I don't know that it's a good movie.
Yeah, I don't think I can call it a good movie.
But I'm willing to say that Freddy vs. Jason is a good movie, but I have it ranked lower.
Yeah. That's fine, because that's in the series.
Yeah.
This is actually one time where our system of ranking and declaration makes total sense.
True.
Because one does not need to reflect the other. What makes a good Friday the 13th movie doesn't necessarily make it a good movie.
But I'll
And
tell
vice
you,
versa.
I mean, I remember really enjoying Freddy vs. Jason when I first saw it in the theater. I thought it was a fun, good time. But a lot of that movie is kind of middling to me until a certain point.
I would agree with that. It's certainly a moment where it really takes off.
Yeah.
And starts to live up to the hype.
Yes.
And boy, according to Crystal Lake Memories, did they hype it outside of the movie.
Right.
Whew. I love the fact we were talking about how long this movie was in production, and yet somehow you still get the writers saying, "We never put in the movie Jason's Afraid of Water. I don't know how that got in there. You were making this movie for 15 years. How is that oversight possible?" Well, I don't know how that line ended up in the movie.
That's
Neither
weird.
of us wrote that. It's like phantom script editors or something. So,
it was really
anyway.
interesting to watch the documentary because they were addressing specific gripes from fandom when they're like, "Oh yeah, we put that in there. They just edited it out. We had it in the script."
But it's interesting given how much we both spoiler. I guess we're giving you a glimpse behind the paywall here, but how much we thought of Friday the 13th, the reboot, because those writers are also responsible for that. And that makes total sense to me that that they're kind of gagged on Freddy versus Jason, and then once they're kind of let loose a bit more on another Friday the 13th movie, they show what they're about. But anyway,
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
All right. Have you declared officially? So you're saying Freddy versus Jason is good. I think you said that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
But I don't
In
think
the world.
I don't think I can. Yeah, I don't think I can say 8 as a movie is not good enough to be good.
No.
I'm gonna have to call it a bad movie. But one I enjoy watching way more than I.
Bad movies, we've been there before. Bad movies can be fun, and this is definitely fun.
All right.
I never regret watching it.
Yeah.
Never. And that says a lot.
Okay, Jason Goes to Hell.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah, it's not. It's not good. It's bad.
Yeah, it's not as bad as we said. It's not as bad as people think it is.
I agree. Yeah.
But it's pretty bad.
Yeah. It's not good. It is bad. But we'll wait till we get there because there are things that I value in it, maybe more than any of the other movies.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. It was kind of, it feels like a movie that needed to happen to get to the next stage of the franchise, but they kind of take a beating because they get so much wrong.
Yeah.
But they are trying to do what they can eventually do more successfully in the subsequent movies. So that experimentality I do appreciate, but it doesn't make for a satisfying viewing experience.
All right. A lot of overlap for us then.
Yeah, just the 3 and 4.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how that was going to go.
Me neither. No.
I thought there was a chance for a lot more disparity, but
I think it's interesting. Another kind of analogy that I made to myself while I was watching this is that because we're so, both of us, especially me, so enamored with the front half of the series.
Yeah.
That's kind of, it's like, I love the series, so any individual installment that doesn't work is like, when you're watching a TV show that you love and there's a season that's not particularly good, or even just a storyline that doesn't quite work, doesn't quite hold together. That's kind of how I feel about these movies. Like, none of them compromise how I feel about the series as a whole.
Yeah, right.
And but this is we've split this right down the middle, so that's half of these movies. You know, if half of The Sopranos was, you know, categorically not good, you probably wouldn't like The Sopranos
Right.
that much. But for some reason, when Friday the 13th is not good, I still love Friday the 13th.
I think, yeah, right. There's still value even within the portions of it that are not good.
Like, it's never going to deter me from going back and starting all over again.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
through.
I, you know, having seen all the movies now, I was, you know, I finally had caught up with them. I finally watched all of them last year.
Yeah.
And coming to this to watch it for our purposes, I wasn't like, oh, God, I got to watch these movies.
No,
I was
the opposite.
I was very excited about coming back to those movies. And I wouldn't, for the series itself, I wouldn't just watch 1 through 6 and stop.
Mm-hmm.
I would watch these other movies.
Because if you think of other series, when I think of other series that are personal to me like that, like the Star Trek movies,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the stumbling blocks are relatively small. Like, you know, some of the nonsense in 5 and
Yeah.
Generations is a little bit weak, and you know, but so there's just a couple of bumps on the road, but the whole second part of the road is bump. It's one long fucking bump. And yeah, it's kind of like the bump where you sort of like start to take sensuous pleasure halfway through, and then realize that, oh, you know what, I might have accidentally had an orgasm there.
That bump tickled my balls.
Yeah, exactly. That bump, it's a bump that occasionally will tickle your balls in a way that's more pleasing than you'd like to admit.
That's good.
Now put that on your poster.
There you go.
That'll be on the whatever. I mean, they don't do. There'll probably be no more Blu-rays of anything released ever again. But
Yeah.
if you were going to re-release the Blu-rays, that's what you want to put on the second set of movies.
Ball tickling pleasing.
But it's hard. I mean, it's hard as well. I mean, you bought all the very wisely last year, and I think you warned me about this. You bought all the DVDs of the movies,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we were going to do it this year, and I had to rent 3 of them, I think.
Yeah. Well, I
The
also
last 3.
this is the state of how televisions are made today are very upsetting because
Yeah.
I have a new TV that in my mind should have, 4 inputs, one for gaming, one for DVD,
Yeah.
one for streaming, and it's just not how they're making them anymore. And then I found,
Computers as well.
yeah, it's so stupid. And I found myself on, Apple TV, and it was like, hey, you could buy 1 through 8, I think it was, for $20. And I thought, for $20? Sure, why not?
Yeah. That's a shame. Yeah, it's like technology its agenda is to eliminate physical media from our lives, or any external plug-in. So it's like fewer outlets every time we get a new model of something. Because the idea is that it's like you just watch streaming the whole time, or you at the most plug in a USB,
Mm-hmm.
or like a Fire Stick or something. That'll go too. That'll be built in at some point.
Well, this TV has a USB, but it's not like my DVD player is a USB. Takes an HDMI.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, exactly.
so
yeah,
for me to watch a DVD, I have to unplug the Apple TV and plug it. It's super annoying.
To me, it all goes together with me to like they're gradually whittling down the number of HDMI outlets So pretty soon we won't have any. I guarantee we won't have any. But they've gone from like 3 or 4 to like one per.
Yeah, I want
one per TV set, and it all goes with the same. It's like streaming is the kind of streaming creep of you're gonna see a few ads now.
Yes,
I know
right.
the whole point. I know the whole point of watching the service is so you didn't have to watch ads, but we're giving you a few ads now, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. Oh, and pay more for it.
Yeah.
Not less, more. And I'm just like, I just like, there'll be a point where we will have no choice about anything.
About anything.
And no recourse to complain about it.
Soapbox, let's step
future.
down.
Well, Jason, you know, this is all leading to Jason X.
True.
It's all leading to the Earth being one permanent dust storm.
Dust storm of nonsense. We gotta find Earth too.
I love how much of a given that was as well. There was no sense that Earth was going to be anything other than fucked.
Garbage.
Yeah.
Anything left for you, sir?
No, we've got a deep dive, I think.
Yeah, we have a task before us. So
draw out more. Gotta get to the bottom of that lake.
Oh, I'm excited. Ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna have to tell us how you rank these movies. That means you gotta watch them first, I guess, if you haven't already, and then tell us where you think each movie is. What's at the top of your list? So find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram. Do not find us on X, but send us a thread.
Unless it's Jason X.
Ooh, well said. Or send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. That's it. When you hear us next, we'll be talking Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood.
Yeah.
Got that title right for once. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. We'll be back. Say goodbye, Tom.
Why won't you die? Freddy becoming the mouthpiece for the audience as we move into the 11th Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah, I like that a guy who won't die is questioning why somebody else won't die.
Well, you know, one of them is fire, one of them is water,
Yep.
it turns out. And one of one of them is your reality guy, the other is the dream guy. It makes total sense. Like,
all right, everybody, we'll be back. Thank you for listening.
how long was that episode?